It's 5:15. I'd like to call this regular meeting to order. I'd like to recognize everybody that's in the audience and online tonight. Would you please stand and recite the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to school board norms. Bob, would you like to read those?
The board developed norms are to share and respect varied opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, to prudently prioritize resources in a student-centric manner that aligns with the district's strategic plan, to exhibit a mindset of continuous improvement through adequate preparation for meetings and a commitment to board education, to commit to assessing board effectiveness to ensure high quality governance for the staff, students, and community of Jamestown.
Thank you, Bob. Moving on to public communications. Peter Theisel, is she online?
Mr. Pop, I did make.
Oh,
There she is.
Catalyst.
Yeah, go ahead, Petra.
oh, okay, sure. So I had actually written a prepared statement that I was hoping that either Mr. Toso or Dr. Heim Larson would be able to read, just as it's easier than trying to read in your house with crazy
Okay.
dogs running around.
Bob, would you like to do that?
Yes, I would. Okay, this Petra Theisel, did I pronounce that right?
It's actually Petra Theisel. Thank you for asking.
Okay, and this is her statement that she sent to me this morning. There's no normal life that is free of pain. It's the very wrestling with our problems that can be the impetus for growth. This is one of the many lessons that I took away from the late, great Mr. Fred Rogers. You might not all know who I am, but I know some of you, as is the nature of relationships in a small community. Sometimes we have multiple roles and our lives intersect in many ways. Greg Allen, I grew up in your daughter Ria's old bedroom. My mother still lives in your old home on 3rd Avenue. Roger Hout, you and your wife Margot are amazing human beings who show compassion to those most in need. Heidi Larson, if memory serves me, you used to be my chiropractor. Regardless of how I know you or how you know me, I would like to share with you my own perspective on the issue pertaining to COVID-19 in the schools. I am a parent of 3, ages 2, 4, and 18, wife, daughter, licensed master social worker, and proud member of the Jamestown community. I went to school in Jamestown from the time I was 4 years old until fall of my senior year of high school. I never really felt that I fit the mold in the Jamestown public school system. This view about myself was reinforced when I was forced into transferring to Fargo South to finish my high school career. It wasn't until I was an adult that we realized we had been dealing with some undiagnosed, invisible disabilities that made it really hard for me to function in a traditional school setting. I know firsthand how it can hurt kids and families when the schools fail the very people that they are in place to protect. Those consequences, positive or negative, stick with you for life. If there are any special educators in the room who focus on learning disabilities among gifted students, the concept of reverse chaining may ring true for you. That's what I needed then. What we now know gives us the tools to support kids in the present and the future. We know enough now to give our kids better than we had and to help them become well-adjusted adults. Yesterday afternoon, my 18-year-old came home and said that he wanted to switch to strictly online schooling as a current hybrid model is not a good fit. For years, we have tried to keep this young man in school because we see the benefit of the social interaction, which is rarely found in other places and environments. We can't really do that anymore because it is literally a physical hazard for a kid to go into school. It is hard on kids to deal with the stress caused by COVID-19 and adults in charge who seem to care more about the budget and the bottom line than the kids themselves. Despite our efforts to deter our son from online schooling in the past, we feel that we have no choice but to allow our son to complete his senior year of high school without being forced to do so in the Jamestown High School physical setting. This pains my heart greatly for multiple reasons. Among these are my own experience as a student in this public school system, a parent of a student in this public school system, working as a professional who took an oath for life to advance the well-being of everyone, not just the easy ones. In addition to the impact on our students, we cannot overlook the impact that this pandemic is having on the way many community members who are so dedicated that they continue coming into the school daily. We cannot ignore the fact that there are postings on the JPS website for substitute teachers needed immediately. Not a single one of us signed up for this specific crisis. I agree with Dr. Leck that everyone is doing the best they can with ever-changing information that can often conflict depending on your source of said info. However, as a member of the community who pays taxes and has children in the school district, I feel a need to speak up. I hear too many stories from people working in grocery stores, restaurant, healthcare, schools, and the list goes on. I think the only thing that everyone in the district can agree on is the fact that we're all completely fatigued from living with and hearing about COVID-19. If we were to follow guidance and evidence-based practices from other states or districts that have successfully managed to control their outbreak, we may have a better chance for success. At this time, I do not have confidence that the leadership team at Jamestown Public Schools is willing to listen to this issue, which should be treated as entirely nonpartisan. I say this because I feel as though information is being given at the last minute or after the fact. I don't know if this is deliberate or just everyone doing the best they can under certain difficult circumstances. However, as a human being, I can tell you that there have been times where it feels as though I've faced lies by omission or by deceit. A recent example of this is a response from an email by Dr. Leck. It was very apparent due to the way that my screen displayed that Dr. Leck had copied and pasted a canned response to my query. This is based on the observation that the text format itself was pasted without having been reformatted. The point that I really want to drive home is that as a community member who has children in the district, I'm too tired to keep up with the district's botched response to this pandemic. The entire community is hurting. Moving forward, my wish would be that parents, teachers, and all community stakeholders could be included in future discussions before decisions are made. For now, I will keep abreast of all the issues, but will be less participatory as I will be working with my kids to attempt to homeschool them. For me, this is a huge, huge privilege/inconvenience. Not everyone is so lucky. I do not feel the middle and high schoolers should be attending school 4 days a week during this time. This plan sets us back further on the road to having a smart restart, quote. Given the directions that this district is going, I may need to alter a lot more things in life to be able to meet my children's and family's bio, psycho, social, educational needs, as well as financial obligations. In the meantime, this is a choice that my family is making together based on what I personally view as a lack of competence and courage from our JPS leadership team. Respectfully, desperately, and humbly calling for meaningful action, Petra Theisel, LMSW. And a quote at the end, you rarely have time for everything you want in this life, so you need to make choices, and hopefully your choices can come from a deep sense of who you are. Mr. Fred Rogers.
Thank you, Petra, for your comments and your concerns. So,
Yes, and thank you for listening.
Yep. Moving on to conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest to declare?
Gail Nelson. I have a conflict of interest with the ELL hire since my daughter is the ELL teacher in the district presently.
Heidi?
I'd like to make a motion to allow Gail Nelson to vote on that particular area.
Is there a second? Seconded by Bob. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And moving to consent agenda.
Everybody else? Melissa Gleason, I have a conflict of interest when we're talking about the University of Jamestown, as I am an employee there.
Heidi?
I'd also like to share the same conflict of interest. I'm employed by the University of Jamestown, but in the academic area, not the athletic area.
Okay. Bob?
I'll make a motion that both our Mrs. Gleason and Dr. Larson participate in the discussion and vote on the issues.
Okay. Is there a
Second.
Seconded by Jason. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Can you guys raise your hand or do something so I know what? Okay. Melissa?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to, when we move into motion, since we have virtual people on the computer and so on, if I'm just going to go to, if I need a motion, I'm going to say I'll entertain a motion for, like, say, F1, and then whoever's going to make the motion, please read the motion out loud, so, with your name. So, moving to the consent agenda. Heidi?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition of the school board members' attendance from the November 2nd TLA presentations.
Okay, there a second? Seconded by Diane. Any discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving into our regular meeting, we have nothing under recognition or correspondence. Superintendent's report. Rob?
All right, you have my written report. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
And the Thompson? Okay. I'll just walk through my board retreat. There's some items that I won't touch on because they are action items, or I'll briefly touch on because they're action items. Just a reminder, as we look at board retreats, or a board retreat in January, if you have any items that you'd like greater discussion on, or topics that you'd like for the board to consider in a retreat, please let me know, and I can work on crafting that meeting. In terms of the UJJPS shared facility, just to touch on a few things, the plans, you have two agreements that you're going to be that are recommended for approval, the shared facilities agreement and the cost sharing agreement. So the shared facilities agreement was written really in conjunction. Sean Johnson, Jim Roltson probably had the most hands touching that agreement. We also had it reviewed by legal counsel John Arnston. And I looked at it, made some changes, and I know Dr. Peterson did as well. So it's had quite a few eyes already for your approval. The cost sharing agreement is almost exclusively done by John Arnston. I did review that, but there weren't any suggested changes based on what he's presented. And again, just really want to commend Brett Mosier and Dr. Peterson for all the work that they've done with this. They've done really the lead work for a lot of the fundraising that has happened. Very pleased to state that we've reached 10 million on that project. So that means over 8 million has been fundraised in really a short amount of time. So we're getting very, very close to where we need to be. And I think that's exciting. And I think it absolutely recognizes the community's support for the project as well. That's really a quick project or a quick amount of money to be raised in that quick of a time. So moving on into the resiliency grants and the changes to debt funding, we'll talk about that as it comes to those proposed expenditures. But in my report, I did link an Excel document too that provides just a little bit more information as well as the memo. But we can touch on those when we get into that portion of the meeting. As I stated the last time we met, the plan is to provide a regular report on the impact of COVID-19 in the school system. So you have a copy of the tables that were made available through our alert center. So that is the November 13th as of 7 a.m. We know that this changes pretty frequently. It changes daily, it changes hourly. We spend an awful lot of time collecting and researching and investigating and reporting for all of our impact numbers. So you can see those on your report. around 1.5% of students that are positive. That's 33. And again, if people that are watching this haven't had a chance to review those videos, there's 2 videos that are on our alert center. The first is the first that I would draw your attention to is the reporting. It's a short 10-minute video. It gives a really good synopsis of the process we use when we go and investigate and report. The second video is more related to these tables and defining what each of these categories mean. When we say a positive, what does that mean? When we say close contact, either quarantine or exempt household contacts, what do all of those mean? So I would really encourage people before they look at those tables. It's really easy to take that sort of thing out of context and make sure you understand how we're defining each of these categories. So again, just draw your attention to the positive. And when we say positive, that is not necessarily students that have been positive in school. Those, for some, for example, might be a household contact that's been in quarantine that has become positive. We deal in those first categories, all but presumed in-school transmission. That is black and white. That is a firm number. We know that because we investigate and we have pretty constant communication with Central Valley Health. I don't think I would be remiss to say that, or exaggerating to say, I speak with them probably 2 or 3 times a day, 7 days a week, because things come up and we ask questions. They ask questions of us. So we're in pretty close contact with them. I did want to spend a little bit of time on presumed in-school transmission because I know that there are questions related to presumed in-school transmission. And I know I've shared this with the board before, but I think it's really important that we understand what we're trying to communicate with presumed spread in that category. That is only what we feel we can reasonably say is connected to school. That's why we call it presumed. Everything else, as we've said before, is really pretty clearly, it is that number. But the presumed in-school transmission is the only category that isn't definitive. You know, we know that there's a lot that happens outside of the 8 to 4 time period that impacts our students and staff. This category has only ever been defined as students or staff that are in close contact that become positive. That's what we know. Other than that, we're making assumptions. And even if this isn't perfect, because there are simply variables that we don't know, but we think it's important to share that information because I think it makes sense to try to quantify it. But that isn't going to be a definitive number. It's simply our best estimation. And it is what I shared earlier. It is those students or staff that are in close contact that become positive. And I guess I can only share, even though that it's our best estimation, I can only say that we spend a great deal of time every day looking at this data. And I would express a bit of caution for anybody making assumptions without a full exploration of that foundational data that goes into all of those tables or all of the categories in that table. And at the end of the day, you know, we're trying to be as transparent as possible, even recognizing that sometimes people interpret the data however they want to justify a specific belief. I think it's important to get that data out so people can see it. And I can only reinforce again that we take great care to investigate, to gain as great an understanding as possible. So when we make recommendations and decisions at the school district level that we're informed. You know, beyond those simple numbers and categories, there are also trends that we spend a great deal of time analyzing. I'm immersed in this data. Our building principals are as well on a daily basis. There's hours devoted to these numbers and to this data every day. I'm appreciative for the principals that share that micro level perspective, that what happens in their school, and that feeds into a macro level perspective from the district. And I will say we know an awful lot about what's occurring in the school as well as what's happening outside of school. It's perfect, of course it isn't. Should we have trust in that data? I believe we should. like I said, we speak with Central Valley Health every single day, multiple times a day, work days and weekends. We speak to an epidemiologist. I would estimate that probably to be at least once a week as well. And beyond that, we meet with our instructional plan review team as well to dig deeper into the data. But I've shared those reports there as well, or those tables with you as well. That's the same that you would have received in an email and staff would have received, and what's on our alert center as well. Really, some of those significant changes and significant challenges continue to be 6 students and 6 staff. We do have, we are concerned about substitute teachers and making sure that we have enough staff in place. So we are working with the University of Jamestown and the community to try to encourage those to take advantage of substitute teaching opportunities. We'd be happy if they sub 10 times to pay for that licensing fee and to pay for the background check fee. That's something that, boy, we really need the community's help with. Just like we want the community's help with following those mitigation strategies to ensure what happens outside of school as well. We know what's been effective in school. And so we want to continue to try to do that and encourage our community to partner with us in those mitigation strategies. Later on, you will be asked to act on the additional EL teacher. I think that is absolutely a need in our district as we have grown in this population, the subgroup of students. The staffing we have is no longer enough, especially when you consider the itinerant nature of this position and the need to travel in a pandemic environment. Even the numbers themselves would support splitting. It gets very difficult for any one person to provide EL support at all these levels, and it's something that, as our numbers have continued to grow, a breakdown of 28 secondary students between 2 buildings and 23 elementary students between as many as 5 buildings absolutely makes sense, and it has my full recommendation to do so. I think it is important to note that some of that would flow through the CARES, at least through the end of this year. But beyond that, it would need to be supported with general fund dollars. Certainly not an issue for this year, as we have general fund dollars that could cover that. But the board just needs to be aware that that's a continuing contract position as well. So just to end my report before I take questions, just a reminder, we are in orange, and we are in that new instructional plan 2. And our plan is to meet with our instructional plan review team, likely virtually, sometime this week. So with that, I would stand for questions if there are any.
Any questions for Rob? Gail?
I have some questions. As this instructional plan looks, are they making any kind of looking ahead with the holidays coming up and the increasing positivity rate we see in our district? I know 2 weeks ago we were at 70 cases per 10,000. Today we're at 225 cases per 10,000. We're the 6th most have the worst COVID in the nation right now by some metrics. What are we doing to look ahead for that? I'm getting a lot of feedback from staff feeling that their feedback isn't reaching that committee. I'm getting a lot of feedback from elementary teachers saying they feel defeated. They feel like what we're doing is unsustainable. They feel overwhelmed. They feel exhausted. Are we taking their accounts? Are we surveying them? When was the last time those elementary people were able to give feedback to that committee, to the middle school people or the high school people? Some of the questions, should they be giving all of that to the teacher rep? Are they being surveyed? Just some real concerns about that. The other concerns I have coming at me, were some of the ones that the parent echoed. We have more parents doing that. I have teachers also saying, that they see what is the transmission rates, but I'm also hearing from them, they feel it's not a matter of if they get COVID. A lot of them are starting to feel it's when they get COVID. So, it isn't necessarily making them feel safe to see that data. Is there any way our staff could have access to a question answer with Central Valley Health or with that epidemiologist to allay, or, to help subside those fears and concerns that they have. Those are some of the feedback that I've been getting where I would say it addresses what was in your superintendent report. Thank you.
I guess probably the biggest response I would have to that would be, I would encourage those staff members, rather than to talk to a singular board member, to speak with me. I would be happy to have those conversations with staff and relay those if there are concerns, or to have a conversation about what those are. I'm deep in that data, and I'd be happy to be able to have a conversation about that. I have not been reached out to minimally to have those questions answered, and I would be more than happy to do that. In regards to Central Valley Health, again, I can't speak for them, but I'm sure that they would have no problem with answering individual questions. They do it, I think, on a daily basis. Answer questions from concerned individuals about mitigation, or I guess whatever their individual question would be. But I would encourage them, if they'd like to have that, have a question answered, simply to reach out to Nurse Deb or to Central Valley Health. Then sure, they'd be happy to have those questions answered.
Jason?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, kind of to piggyback off what Gail said, I don't think staff are reaching out to just a single board member. I think they're expressing a lot of concerns. And I guess I just really find it ironic that we're having more and more of our school board attending these meetings virtually or via Zoom, and we're still asking our staff to go into the buildings. And I understand the whole close contacts language, but to me, it comes down to not only students and staff that are positive, but I'm really getting concerned about the toll this is taking, because to me, it's about the number of bodies out of a building in the day. And that's getting overwhelming in some of our schools. So I guess one question I would have is, have we ever thought about at what point we're going to make a shift? I mean, do we need to see a certain percentage of students absent, a certain percentage of staff absent? Have we ever looked at anything like that to quantify or define when maybe we need to, because I'm not saying that the answer right now is to do everybody online either. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we may have an opportunity up here coming with the holidays that if things aren't going well, we could make some kind of a switch that would improve our chances for second semester. So I guess my real question is, have we quantified what it would take as far as numbers for us to decide that the risk just isn't worth the reward anymore?
Just a quick question, Jason. Are you asking that question directly of me or to the board?
Anybody.
Board, okay, because the board has requested the authority to make that particular decision. So I'm just curious if you're asking me or if you're asking me.
So maybe that would be something that, maybe our committee who brings the recommendation to the board, have they done any analysis like that to say, we've reached this level, it's just not looking good right now, maybe we need a different solution?
Well, I would say that the committee looks pretty holistically at a lot of different numbers, and I'd be cautious to say any one metric is the decision. That's the metric that's going to drive you to one instructional plan or the other. I think it comes down to, as we've said on a number of occasions, you're looking at a balance between providing academic support, social emotional support, and that in a safe and healthy learning environment. I don't think that is easily translatable to one particular metric or the other. I think the best answer, or at least the answer for the instructional plan review committee, will be continue to look at that data and make a decision based on what that data is telling you.
Jason?
Sorry, and when do you meet next? When does that committee meet next?
Well, we'll have to set a meeting this week.
Heidi?
I was just suggesting maybe we could have Robin Isler come to one of our next board meetings and maybe just kind of do, from her point of view, on a public health point of view, and just invite her as a guest to speak to us and maybe answer some questions that we might have. And also, she also may be able to share some, by that time, share some information on vaccine and vaccine rollout for COVID-19 and just how that, I don't know how that affects our schools and where we're at in the lineup, but maybe we could have her as a guest, just a thought.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you for that. I did invite Central Valley Health to come to our next board meeting to provide board education. And I would encourage, if there's any specific questions that you have that you'd like for them to provide a response to, maybe the best way would be to send those directly to me, and I can send them to Robin, just so we can compile them in one place and give them all at one time. But I'm certain that they would want to be prepared with the questions so they can provide the best possible response to you as well.
Greg?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one point in case, staff was thinking that, yeah, we have board members that are doing this virtually. I do go into my job every morning. I mean, because it's my job. The only reason that I do this virtually is because I have the opportunity to. If I had to be there, I would be there. So I don't want the staff to think that, I'm just trying to avoid things, because I do go to work every day because I'm required to. So I just want to clarify that point.
And Greg, I think that's an important point to note too. As public officials, those in the public eye, we are also expected to role model what the expectations are. When you are recommended to be in quarantine, the expectation from a school perspective is that you are. And so this option might be in place for those that are, trying to be good role models as well for what's expected of us as a community. This is the reality that we live in right now, that people are ebbing and flowing between the regular workday, their regular workforce, and virtual, based on the expectations in our community. One point I didn't bring up that I wanted to bring up too is the Jamestown Virtual Academy. I've had questions on the Virtual Academy as well. And I just want to reiterate that we've shared in the past that we have 2 windows open, and that was approved by the board. We have 2 windows to get people enrolled in the Jamestown Virtual Academy. We had one in August, and the second opening up in December. That is based on the semester. So we also allow students beyond that to opt back in to school earlier this year, because we were hearing that there's a large number of families that wanted to explore that option. So outside of those deadlines, the semester break, the beginning of the year, planning for second semester, we will also consider those families that have documented medical needs, assuming that a student is a good fit for a virtual learning platform. We approve those to move into either Prep Digital or at the high school level. That's happened with Ingenuity. All of the requests with medical need, at least that I'm aware of, have been approved. If any request is made that doesn't meet those criteria, those individuals could always appeal to me if there's a special circumstance that the district should consider. So I wanted to make that aware, because I've had questions about the Virtual Academy as well. So hopefully that answered some questions related to that.
Heidi?
Yeah, I just appreciate you and the principals in the buildings working with those families that have needs and concerns, just working with those families so that, you can find a learning arrangement that works for them. I just also want to remind families, I know this has been mentioned before, but if their children have symptoms, that they should keep them home and consult their healthcare provider. And I think, even if they have minor symptoms and feel well enough to go to school, when we're in a pandemic, that's a different situation. A year ago, you probably would have sent them to school maybe with a little sniffle or a cough or something. But at this time, just ask all families to make sure that they are keeping their children home with any symptoms at all and consulting their healthcare provider for further direction.
Any other questions for Rob on his report? Gail?
I just have some questions too. I guess I have some concerns bringing in Jamestown or University of Jamestown students to be our subs in the middle of a pandemic with all the responsibilities on classroom teachers now to keep masks on, to identify their students who may have been close contacts. Those subs would be in that high positive rate in our community. That 20 to 29-year-old is a really high group. I just have some concerns if this is the patch that's going to be effective. I think that's a lot to ask of a college student. I guess I have just some concerns of that. I think I'd like to piggyback too on what Heidi said, and also that same thing for staff. I think our staff are feeling really guilty if they're symptomatic and stay home because of what that's doing to their coworkers and how their coworkers then have to cover classes for them. And just remind them that that's okay too. They're feeling very guilty when they're gone and that extra burden that's created. We're in a real tough spot, and I realize there aren't any answers, but I just do have some concerns that during a pandemic, that's a lot to ask of a college student with classroom control, with classes at 100% capacity, the masking issue, the distancing issue, all of those things are a lot for a sub to just step into.
Any other questions for Rob or? None. Moving on to, we don't have anything under board education. Any old business? We have none. Moving into new business. We have nothing under activities. Moving to building and grounds, I'd entertain a motion on letter A. Bob?
I move we approve the University of Jamestown and Jamestown Public Schools shared use agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Greg. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, or raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I would entertain a motion on letter B. Bob?
I move we approve the agreement for cost sharing for athletic field renovation with the University of Jamestown.
Is there a second?
Gail, second.
Seconded by Gail. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Roger.
Bob?
Dr. Leck, maybe, I don't know how soon it would be appropriate, but I'd be interested in periodical updates during the winter on progress with both the complex at the high school and what's going on at UJ, please.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Probably not a lot of change going to happen for a while as we hit the winter season, and then it'll be pretty heavy once spring rolls around and they're able to get moving. So everything that we've been told thus far, and I know that it's early, is that they still believe that we would be the first participant in the facility because we have the first football game there. But they are still anticipating that we would be able to open our season at the shared complex. So I will absolutely provide those updates as I get them as well. And maybe it would be beneficial to have Dustin Jensen from the University of Jamestown, who's really the lead on some of the construction pieces, to have him come to the board and share an update as well. So I'll work on all of that.
Bob?
Dr. Leck, has there been any discussion on keeping Ernie Gates ready for play just in case UJ isn't ready?
Well, I think that's the expectation that we have to have in place. I mean, we'll see how things come along in the spring, and we can reasonably suggest would be the case with completion. But I would think it would be appropriate and really prudent for us to continue to expect at least a game if they can't make it there. Like I said, at the very least, a game that we should be planning that as a contingency, we might need to play at Ernie Gates.
Okay, moving on to curriculum, we have, Jason?
I just had a quick question. If we know of somebody who would be interested in contributing, do we contact UJ, JPS, Mr. Mosier, Mr. Roldson?
Okay, so I accidentally muted the board's, Mr. Hout, I might have to have you go unmute that again because I accidentally muted the wrong, or unmute.
You're on now. You're good to go.
Okay. So, sorry about that. So if you have a potential interested donor, Brett Mosier at the University of Jamestown would really be the best contact. If somebody would prefer to contact me, that would be fine. I'd be happy to have a conversation, but Brett would probably be the best contact.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the agenda, we have nothing under curriculum assessment. Moving to finance, entertain a motion on 4A. Diane? Your mic.
I move that we approve the proposed projects for the Resiliency and Education Core Grants.
Is there a second? Oh, Heidi? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Hout, if I could just,
Go ahead, Rob.
Mr. Hout, make a comment about that. I think I referenced this in my report as well, at least the written piece of the report, or in this board memo. But we have around 507,000 from Education Core, or I'm sorry, from the Education Core, 581,000 from Resiliency Grants. The proposed items that I have in this memo, more detailed in the Excel document. Do the math there, it's more than what we have available. And the reason that we did that is because there are some expenditures that we know are fixed, and there's others that are dependent. We don't have an exact cost on some of those yet. For example, when we are providing stipends for staff to receive some professional development, one of the fixed costs of that is we know how much it costs to give everybody access to the Educators Conference, the NDCEL Educators Conference, which we did. But we also provide stipends for those that watch 12 hours, that participate in 12 hours of virtual professional development. We budget that everybody does, but we know the reality is just not everybody probably will. And so to ensure that we can spend all of those dollars by that December 30th deadline, we included all the projects that we thought could fit in. And so we'll prioritize those projects, but there isn't a project that will fund out of these federal dollars that are not in this list or not in this memo. But I wanted to make sure that there weren't any questions about that. I just wanted to be clear about what I was proposing. Were there questions about that at all?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to, I'd entertain a motion on 4B. Heidi?
I make a motion to approve to submit the North Dakota Space Consortium grant.
Is there a second?
Gail Nelson, second.
Thanks, Gail. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to 4C, I would the general fund budget, that's there for your information. Moving to 4D, is there a motion to entertain a motion on 4D? Bob?
I move we approve the monthly financial reports.
Is there a second? Seconded by Diane. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to personnel, I'd entertain a motion on 5A. Heidi?
I'd like to approve the resignation of Susanna Walker, mathematics and business teacher at the Hub at the conclusion of the 2020 and 2021 school year. And we'd also like to thank her for her service. And I know she's spoke to the board a few times over the years and always appreciated the information she provided, so.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jason. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Oh, Bob?
I'd just like to point out, and she could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mrs. Walker has been a part of Jamestown North and the Hub since its founding back longer ago than I think any of us would care to say. So thank her for that.
She really is, and I'll tell you what, if you don't mind if I interject here, I'm sorry, but.
Go ahead.
Susanna is really, Mrs. Walker, really the heart and soul of that program for many, many years, and will really be a loss to us, and just a true advocate for at-risk kids. We very much appreciate her.
Gail? Got to unmute. You have to unmute your mic, Gail. Nope, it's on her machine.
I'll do it there. I had to do it in 2 places.
There you go.
I would just say, as a school counselor, I too would second what an advocate she was, and what a joy she was to work with. And there was no one more fierce than her for her students than I can imagine. It was a delight to work with her over the years.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to 5B, I would entertain a motion. Diane?
I move to approve the hiring of Samantha Gonzalez as English learner teacher for secondary education with a BABS salary $28,661.15, 119 prorated days for the 2020-2021 school year.
Is there a second? Seconded by Heidi. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. You opposed, Jason? Oh, okay, thank you. Motion carries. Moving to policy and procedures, entertain a motion on 6A. People on the screen can vote or make motions.
I would move for the approval of the second reading of copyrighted material and intellectual property policy ABCEA.
Is there a second?
Gail Nelson, second.
Okay, Gail second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I entertain a motion on 6B. Heidi?
I move to approve to rescind the North Dakota Comprehensive Model School Policy for Tobacco Use, ABBA.
Is there a second? Seconded by Diane. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to, I'd entertain a motion on 6C. Anyone? Oh, Diane?
I move to approve the rescinding of the tobacco-free schools and workplaces violations by the public, ABBA-BR.
Is there a second? Seconded by Melissa. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Entertain a motion on 6D. Jason?
I'm sorry, that was 6D, right?
D is in dog, correct.
Okay. I would move for the approval of the first reading of North Dakota Comprehensive Model School Policy for Tobacco Use, ABBA.
Is there a second? Seconded by, we'll go Gail, she had her hand up first. Any discussion? Greg?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Hout. There's a portion of that at the very end of that policy that states it will be reviewed annually. The plan would be to do that as part of our annual meeting in July, and we would do that as we do other policies that we have set to review every year. So just a point of clarification for those of you had a question.
Okay. Greg?
Yeah, I've got a question on page 2 of policy. It about halfway down, it says another smoking tobacco, and then it says Cavendish. I think the word they wanted was Cavender. I don't know if Cavendish smoking element. So, and then just below that, a little bit further down, it has a section where it says and then it says name of district. And I think that's where we should put in our name.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. It's not Cavendish. I think that's the spell check, local spell check effect there. But we'll make sure that that gets addressed in any approval. Would include those clerical changes.
Thank you.
Good catch, Greg. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to, I'd entertain a motion on 6E and subsequent 1. Heidi?
I moved approval of amended school assignment and choice, FAB, policy, and subsequent review of amended request of waiver to the district attendance policy, FAB-E2.
Is there a second? You can raise your hand too on the board. Seconded by Gail. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'd entertain a motion on 6F. Diane?
I move for approval of the first reading of summer school policy, GACD.
Is there a second? Seconded by Melissa. Any discussion? Heidi?
I just had a question. I can't link the policy here quick right now, but when I read it, it said something about with the summer school being funded in a certain way. Is that typical, or do we want to maybe leave it open with superintendent approval of something outside of that?
Rob, you?
So normally all of those summer school courses would be funded, would be supported through state foundation aid. I can't think of an instance in which it would not be.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on, we have nothing under tuition or other. We have meetings to be scheduled. We have the next school board meeting is Monday, December 7th in the Thompson Community Room in the middle school. Roman numeral 5, just to remind everybody to right-click on the monthly superintendent evaluation to do that. It's section 4 and 5, and what, Heidi, here? Oh, any items for future agenda? That was not on here, but if there is something, just let Rob or myself know, and we'll see what we can do to get it on there. Gail?
I might need to have the evaluation sent to me different. They're waiting to get me a new keypad. My right click to do it isn't working. I
Okay.
haven't heard yet back from Quentin if it's in yet. So if
Okay.
they could just send me that evaluation to do differently, it's just,
We'll see what we can do there. If not, once you get your new device, I mean, you can go back and
go
do
back
it.
and get it. It's
Yep.
just not working. It's not cooperating at all. It's kind of a
Okay.
dead zone or something. Or God forbid it would be me.
We'll get it taken care of.
Thanks.
Moving to Roman numeral 6, just to remind everybody to right-click on the adjournment to assess our meeting, and thanks everybody for participating the way we could, so thank you.